Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, whatever time zone you might be in. My name is Jason Parker. I am a senior consultant with Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft nearly 9 years. I spent 2 of those years in the commercial sector, dealing with primarily Office 365 and Exchange and other productivity tools. The past 7 years, I've been dedicated to the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, and kind of split my time between migrating them to Office 365, migrating nearly a million mailboxes, and that was about 4 years ago. They're fully in the cloud now, primarily focused on Azure infrastructure, DevOps, automation, Windows Virtual Desktop, all those things. So. Uh, Today we're going to be covering WVD security, and we're not going to be going deep into hardcore security, but more at a top level how um, the Microsoft team has been supporting a security posture at the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, which I'll just refer to as the VA going forward. And the VA, like most federal agencies, have a lot of security in mind into how you connect and how you leverage services inside their organization. And prior to WVD, there were really only two ways you could get access into the agency, and that would be through a VPN client on a VA issued laptop, or if you're coming in via Citrix. Due to COVID, and we gave a presentation back in January or December and talked about how we deployed for the VA, and the primary driver behind WVD at the VA was coronavirus and work from home. And so we've continued to widen our adoption on the platform in the VA and continue to just evolve the platform. So today's agenda is going to focus on network security, host pool security, and profile security. I'm going to admit full transparency here. I am not a network expert. I leverage very, very smart people who are network experts. So I'll be covering some information that I'm not an expert in, but hopefully, I have enough knowledge to kind of speak through it if you have questions. So we'll talk about security starting at the edge, then going into virtual network subnets and routes, and then how you can leverage Azure firewalls to help shape your traffic if so desired. So at the VA, when we talk about security starting at the edge, this is really how do we get people access into WVD? Because the VA is a federal agency, and we'll talk a little bit later about host pool security and authentication, but the most federal agencies are using smart card type authentication. And when you're dealing with certificate-based smart card authentication, especially in WVD, you must use KDC proxy in order to authenticate. And the way that our team worked to deliver this authentication mechanism is leveraging Azure Front Door, sitting in front of public load balancers that then tie into Azure Firewall. And from there, we then send traffic to any number of KDC proxy servers that sit in our primary hub environment. Those proxy servers act as the Kerberos authentication mechanism to the domain controllers back on premises and provide that authentication token. We are leveraging Azure AD. So when we talk about how do you subscribe to like a WVD feed, that's still an Azure AD function because that's how we assign users. But logging into the actual VM does require smart card Kerberos authentication. So this is a high-level diagram just kind of showing how we're sending that traffic in a multi-regional setup where you would have essentially WVD session hosts residing in East US, West US, South Central US. And I won't talk on it too much, but for the VA, we are split in as far as we provide WVD clients out of the Azure public cloud versus Azure government cloud, which obviously the VA would also be a part of. And that's primarily because their productivity tools are also based out of Azure public, part of the GCC environment. So in order to provide the best experience possible to the productivity tools that are hosted in Azure, we decided to build WVD out of the public side. Continuing that conversation about network security, we look at virtual networks, subnets, and routes. Really, the main message here is to try and keep your environment as simple as possible, right? If we try and make things complicated for complexity's sake, it's never a good way to start. Some ways that you can do that would be, leveraging a single virtual network within your subscription that's handling WVD, or just for WVD in general. That may be through a single large address space or maybe multiple smaller address spaces. Make sure you're peering your VNets where necessary, especially if you need that traffic to flow between different environments and you need your session host to be able to communicate with other environments. We'll talk a little bit here in a minute about how we've set up kind of a hub and spoke model to ensure we have proper communication into and out of all of the enclaves and environments that we've got. Subnets are really one of those things that become a foundational item as you look at deployment, especially if you're talking deployment at scale or deployment through pipeline methodologies, where you need to make sure that your subnet naming, especially the prefixes, have your deployment in mind, ensuring that as you build subnets, that you've got a valid numbering sequence that can support any sort of automation or pipeline model. We are a big proponent of infrastructure as code and using CI/CD pipelines as much as possible for our deployment. So in that fact, we try and build all of our architecture around leveraging naming conventions that allow for automation. And then finally, ensuring that your subnets have, at least to start with, an open network security group, and that way you can at least capture flow logs into log analytics for either traffic analytics or other things. And then as you develop traffic patterns, you may end up applying security rules at different subnet layers or things of that nature, especially if you want to do things that wouldn't revolve around your network routes or tables or things of that nature. So from a kind of hub and spoke perspective, this kind of goes back a little bit to security starts at the edge, but for the VA, we built a hub and spoke model where the hub primarily maintains all the connections to multiple express route endpoints, where we have all of our Microsoft peering. In the hub model, we maintain routes, virtual private or virtual network gateways and firewalls, Azure firewalls that allow traffic shaping or separate routing. The VPN gateway is something that we use in order to ensure we get communication to our Azure government spaces. Obviously, we would have peering between the subscriptions that would have the production WVD session hosts. And this could easily scale out to where you have multiple hubs in different regions that all tie into different spokes out of different regions. But this is just one way that you can look at building a hub and spoke model. So as we go further into like route tables, one of the things that we ran into as our environment has a lot of requirements around how we route traffic is there are limitations around route tables in Azure. So, there's a 400 route limitation on route tables, and it's one of the things that we did as an organization was we were able to push the things that we were doing with route tables back to the product team because the WVD traffic wasn't using service tags. And once service tags were, and so then all of the WVD traffic that was necessary were sitting on very small /32 networks, or even small, or even a little bit bigger than that. But naming all of those subnets in your route tables became quite the chore. So through help with, Thomas was a huge help in driving some of this adoption through the product team. We were able to get WVD service tags lit up a little bit faster than probably expected. And that helped us kind of reduce our route table limits. And then again, route tables are going to use to help drive your specialized traffic if you want to shape your traffic in any certain way, especially if you've got host pools in specific subnets where you want to route that traffic differently than other host pools. So how would this play out in a logical overview? So in here, this is an example of how we do things at the VA, where we have a production WVD environment in the spoke that has session hosts that are tied to subnets with route tables. Being a federal agency, there's a lot of special things that are done in federal agencies. If you're not familiar with a terminology called TIC, or the acronym TIC, it stands for Trusted Internet Connection. And that is a series of governances that relate to how federal agencies are to handle inbound and outbound internet traffic. And so following tech guidelines on how we do things really plays into your session hosts, where our session hosts in particular, need to route traffic, anything that's not destined for the local subnet or something that's not Azure related, needs to go through the VPN gateway that then goes back to our express routes, and then via our TIC enclaves back to wherever they're going to go, whether that's the internet, on premises, government, web services, etc. You do see a VPN gateway here where we do have IPsec VPN tunnels back to government. And that's really only for directory services traffic, because we have domain controllers that sit back in Azure government that we need to pass our KDC traffic to. The firewall in number 9 here is used to help shape our traffic, and that's how we're using the routing table, is that we send all of our Azure and Office 365 specific routes to the Azure Edge, and only that traffic is allowed to the Azure Edge. Again, because being a federal customer, we want to make sure that all of the other internet traffic is flowing through their TIC endpoints. Again, this is just an idea of how you can leverage route tables and your networks to shape your traffic to send places where you may, in different directions. To take that step a little bit further, we can look at a simple Azure firewall connection. So this would be looking, in a WVD host pool environment where you've got session hosts that are tied to a VNet sitting on a subnet. We would be sending all default gateway traffic, or 0/0 traffic, back to the on-premises VPN gateway. Also, any local on-premises traffic would be sent to the gateway. But anything that's Azure or Office 365 public IPs then get routed to the Azure firewall. That Azure firewall has the routes based in it to send the traffic across the Azure Edge to leverage services like KMS, the WVD telemetry, Office 365, Teams, anything Azure related. So the Azure firewall, gives us a lot of flexibility, provides threat intelligence, logging, granular control of inbound and outbound ports and protocols. And in this simple case, all we're doing is just saying, hey, Office 365 or Azure Edge traffic needs to go across this, hit the firewall and then be routed appropriately. Anything else is going to be routed through the VPN gateway and go back to on-premises. If you wanted to be a little bit fancy, you could implement multiple firewalls where you wanted to shape traffic, particularly for, say you wanted to, in the VA's case, we are building privileged access workstations, or something similar to privileged access workstations, where administrators can jump in and do administrative work with their privileged accounts. But those are accounts that, again, being privileged, you need to limit how they can connect to different services. For example, you wouldn't want any of your privileged accounts to be accessing email, to be using Office suites, or getting out to specific internet websites. There are some things that admins do need to do, but this is a case where you can implement a secondary firewall inside the environment where you're running your host pools that you can send traffic to and do additional filtering, so that, hey, if you want to hit a specific website, we'll allow that, or otherwise we're going to send all that traffic back to the VPN gateway and have the TIC environment then filter that, because the VA obviously does additional filtering from there. But this would just be another way that you could build a more complex firewall solution. Doesn't mean that you have to, but again, this is one way we can talk about network security within your environments. So that kind of covers network security at a super high level. We'll take a couple of questions after we get through the presentation if you've got questions about that, or you can put them in the chat and somebody can kind of keep track of those things. So next we'll talk about host pool security. At the VA, we talked about earlier certificate-based smart card authentication. For federal agencies, this is critically important. Federal agencies are not anytime soon moving away from smart card authentication. If anything, some of the organizations have doubled down on it from the standpoint of issuing new certificates and smart cards through new providers. But this brings on some conversations that you need to have about how users are going to connect into your environment. So the first thing is talking about the types of clients. If you've got anybody that's using a bring your own device, things you need to be aware of is that Mac OS currently does not support certificate-based authentication primarily through Kerberos, which means that you'll have a whole group of people that probably can't connect. In addition, you can't use, and I forgot to put it on here, but you also cannot use a web browser to connect, as the web browser client does not support Kerberos-based smart card authentication. Other devices like ARM or other small form factor systems should be considered on how those people would connect if they've got tablets or iPads. Those things are going to fall under kind of the same rules. The second item here would be foreign Active Directory domain join systems. And you wouldn't really think this would be a problem, but imagine, if you will, you're an organization that leverages contractors, and those contractors primarily have their own computer systems that are coming from their corporations and their enterprises. And those devices, by and large these days, I would say fewer and fewer, as we move forward, but they are natively joined to their enterprise Active Directory. Getting those systems to do Kerberos-based certificate authentication is a challenge, because natively, when those machines are joined to an Active Directory, they will always try and communicate with their home realm, their Active Directory forest. Even if they're not connected, it will attempt to take a certificate that is not issued from their environment and try and validate that against a domain controller in there that's hard coded into their NT auth store. And there's an article, and I should have linked it here, but there's an article for certificate-based authentication for Active Directory domain join systems that are not to your corporate environment. And it's, not every environment's going to want to do this, but in short, the current workaround would be to the certificate for the environment in which you are attempting to authenticate to, you would add that certificate to your enterprise NT auth store on your local machine. Again, not every IT organization is going to want to have foreign certificates in their NT auth store. They may view that as being a security risk. But good news is there is support for these systems on the roadmap, and we can look towards the end of CY21 to see better guidance around that. Other things to be aware of are your corporate assets. Are they Active Directory joined? Are they hybrid AD joined? Are they purely Azure Active Directory joined? Those are going to play roles into how your smart card authentication is going to work for those systems. The next item about smart card authentication, particularly in federal agencies, is that you see the use of smart card middleware. And if you're not aware, but one of the biggest companies that support smart card today is HID. HID has a middleware application called Active Client. It's highly used in a lot of federal agencies. This presents a very significant problem for your smart card based authentication. That is because of the way that the certificate containers are presented between the source and destination systems. And because of that, you run into a scenario where your source client must match your destination client. So imagine, if you will, you've got a source machine that does not have active client installed, but you're connecting to a WVD session host where you do have active client installed because it's required by your organization. Those users are going to fail to connect. And there's really not a good workaround for this. So this is a case where, the active client, you have to have active client on the source computer must match active client on the destination computer, or the alternative would be no active client on your source computer matching a no active client on the destination computer. Unfortunately, the solution that we are currently faced with is you either have to duplicate your infrastructure, meaning you've got session hosts that have active client installed, and then you have whole other session hosts and other host pools that do not have active client installed. And then you have to direct your users to use one of two different types of host pools based on that information. It's not great. The story is not great right now. We're still investigating and reviewing possible fixes to this. One way to get around this is to just force the source systems to install active client. Again, there may be licensing implications. There may be local administrator rights on those systems that may be an issue. So that may not work in every situation. But again, these are things to be aware of. When we talk about host pool security, it really revolves around how are you assigning users access, and that's through either the desktop application groups or if you're leveraging personal assignments. So things you need to be thinking about are, how many users do you plan to support in your host pool for the given application group? Those are going to have impacts onto the users that you put into groups that are assigned to those host pools. If you're going to limit the size of those groups, and how do you plan to provide those limitations? One solution would be to leverage, if you've got an enterprise identity system like MIM, Microsoft Identity Management, where you can leverage assignments of users to groups based on numbers and provide. There's lots of different ways that you could do that. It's not necessarily easy, but those are things that need to keep in mind so that you don't subscribe too many users to a pool that's not meant to support that capacity, especially if you don't have a good operational model in place to expand those pools or to grow those environments organically. Do you plan to support multiple regions? And if you do you plan to provide application groups in ways that a user would be assigned to both regions of a similar type host pool? Those are things that would need to be considered. When we look at personal assignments, it's important to remember that when you assign a personal desktop to a user, that is forever, at least forever until that virtual machine is deleted. That's currently under investigation. I think there's some work being done to try and find ways to reassign those machines. And then when you are looking at personal assignments, deciding on whether or not you want to use automatic assignment or direct assignment. Automatic would be great if you've got a whole number of users that need to connect to VMs and you want to let them just kind of assign them as they connect. A direct method would be more of, you've got these users that need to go to these particular VMs because they're sized a particular way. Then doing a direct assignment might be for you. Next, we'll talk about profile security. This is really kind of the last element of the security overview we're talking about. Profile security is a big deal, especially if you're leveraging things like FS logics and profile containers, and those profile directories need to be accessible by the VMs and the users, but you don't want anybody to be able to get into those profiles. This is not something new to WVD, but it's something that needs to be thought of. And in this deck, we've kind of talked about ways that you can achieve this. So if you are using Azure Files as your source of profile destination, the thing you'll want to make sure that you do is getting your Azure Files joined to your Active Directory. But when you secure the share, it's important to remember that RBAC controls are what define the share permissions. So luckily there's a built-in role titled SMB share. And if you look for that role definition, that's how you would assign, at least at the share level, the minimum privileges necessary for the users that would be creating profiles. The downside is that Azure Files doesn't have native support for what we would do on premises or in a traditional NTFS ACL where you would assign authenticated users. So that's something to be aware of. You can create cloud-based groups or Azure AD groups that would contain, all of your users. But for an organization like the VA, where you've got, over 1 million potential AD accounts, you can't just put all those people into a singular group. That becomes problematic. If you're using Azure NetApp files, which we are at the VA, if you want to modify the share permissions through computer management, you can put in the FQDN of the mount path that's been assigned, but you must have domain or enterprise admin rights to do so. You can go to the volume share, and modify the ACLs there. And those are going to use traditional NTFS ACL permissions. So, this isn't a class or an overview on how to use NTFS permissions, but hopefully you have experience in that area so that you can apply those permissions effectively. Finally, if you're using some sort of traditional file server or clustering or scale out file server, again, follow the traditional NTFS ACL permissions to ensure that your users have access to create folders in those directories. Once you've secured the share, should you be using SDDL? Well, in this example, what I'm saying is I think this is the way. Hopefully there's some Mandalorian fans out there that might appreciate this meme. This is a terrible slide. I apologize for that. So FS Logics is the way. And why is it the way? Is because FS Logics, nice, Jeff, I like your helmet. FS Logics is the way because it does provide SDDL. And if you're not familiar with SDDL, I wasn't super familiar with it at first. I kind of knew on the surface what SDDL was, but it's essentially a security descriptive language that allows you to define how you want to apply security in a natural string format. So in this deck, I've provided a link to where you can find information on SDDL syntax and format. In addition, FS Logics provides this natively through a registry key. And FS Logics has the SDDL reference on the Microsoft Docs website. From there, you can apply your SDDL. And this would be where you would, do your research on what is the syntax required. And I'm not going to go over the exact syntax here, but ensuring that you've got the correct permissions applied to the profiles as they're created. So when a user logs on, FS Logics is going to look for that directory for that user's profile. And if it doesn't exist, it's going to create the directory. When it does so, if you have this registry key provided, it will apply the security permissions based on the SDDL data in this registry key. So it'll apply creator owner as full control. It'll apply the administrator group that you want to have full control. It'll ensure that it's only applying in a certain propagation, adhering to inheritance and all those things. You can apply this through GPO. You could do it manually. You could do it through desired state configuration. At the VA, like I said before, we are heavily invested into infrastructure as code and a DevOps mentality. So desired state configuration is what we are currently using. And this is an example of what that desired state configuration would look like for that registry key. If you were to look at the actual machine, this is what the registry key, where it's located and what it would look like. Again, you would have the registry key name in a string format, and then the syntax of how you want that to be applied. So this is just a representation. If, for example, you were like us and we were in a rush to build out our environment, so we had profile volume set up and we set up all the paths and then we deployed everything and we had users connect, and then we're like, oh, wait, all of our shares are wide open to everybody, full control. The security risk is not huge in that regard. It would require somebody within the network doing a network scan to find that those shares are out there to discover the FQDN of those profile paths, and then leveraging that to do a port scan to make sure that they were SMB shares, and then be able to find those. So there is a security risk there. The amount of security I think is minimal, but we did have an operation where we needed to go back and re-secure those directories. We did write a function to do this in PowerShell, and this is largely around how the VA and our team deployed the profile directory structures. And I won't go into the long drawn out detail, but at a high level, there's multiple domains in the VA, and we have volumes that are tied to those domain names, the NetBIOS domains. So that's why you see a parameter here for that, where we would go through those shares, and we would parse all the directories, and all the directory names have the user's name, their SAM account name with their SID. So we could easily parse that string and then develop a hash table that would have the actual ACL that needs to get applied, and we would apply that permission to that directory, ensure that all the inheritance settings were done. So if we've got a little bit of time and people want to see it, we can kind of go through the code and what that looks like. But suffice it to say that there is ways to go through those directories and re-secure them after the fact. So with that, we've kind of really reached the end. I kind of blew through that pretty quickly. Want to leave some time for questions. We had to do some changing around of the schedule today because I do have a hard stop. But if you want to get in contact with me, here's my email address. You can find me on LinkedIn, on GitHub. I do have a blog that I should be writing more to, but I haven't posted in a while. But in any event, that's all I've got for today. I'd like to open it up for questions for those that have any.
Take a look at the chat. I don't see any questions.
I put this in the window, but let me also promote that Jason's doing some excellent work publishing some automated scripts. If you were here for the previous presentation that Jason and Kevin did, you'll see or have some insight into some of the automation that he's worked on. Really great repository and resource for automating some components for WVD.
Yeah, I will give a fair warning. I'm right in the middle of a massive update to the repository, so that is coming in the next week or so. It's a pretty fundamental change to the overall layout, but yeah, we can provide the link. The documentation is not totally up to date, so again, take this with a grain of salt. A lot of the framework is there, but there'll be a massive update coming to this in the next. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for the time today, and
thank you, Jason.
Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or.
It's good stuff. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate you coming and sharing what you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for giving me an excuse to show off my helmet. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Right on.
I was trying to hold back from saying Jason has spoken.
Are you ready for us, or?
Yeah. So next up we have the Liquit team. So take it away, Chuck.
Well, thank you, Jen. Appreciate it, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to share what we do. We're certainly excited about the great activity that we've had going on over the past, I'd say, year or so. So we're here to talk about Windows Virtual Desktop and how you can have every user access every application that's running on every platform from every device using and helping with Windows Virtual Desktop. So who are we? We're a company headquartered in the Netherlands, Ridderkerk, actually. And I'm headquartered in the US, in Chicago. We have over 450 customers. One of our partners called us the best kept secret in the industry. And some of our customers have in upwards of 100,000 plus users. So, you know, we're a proven technology. We've been around for 5 years, and you know, predominantly in Europe, mostly Benelux and around Europe and such. But over the past year, we've been growing exponentially, and we are in all regions of the world. And a lot of the growth has been not only through the, you know, our big focus is on customer innovation, and really that's our top priority. Observing the market, listening to customers, and working very closely with our partners, such as Microsoft. And as you can see there, you know, we have VMware and Avanti and Citrix and all the others. However, we are a Microsoft certified partner. We are a WVD integration partner. And we also work with Microsoft on the MSIX app attach side of things, because what we do encompasses a broad range of you know, applications, delivery, and access. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that. So interestingly enough, where the market is today, right? And this is going to kind of give you an idea of why Liquit, right? So we are a company that provides software, a software platform. And, you know, recently, Gartner had their strategic technology trends of 2021. One of the key areas out of that came anywhere operations. And I think anywhere operations was starting before COVID, but now that COVID hit and companies realized they weren't truly prepared to enable a remote workforce and manage it in the way that it should be, I think they realize that they need a real, for lack of a better term, paradigm. I said it. They need a paradigm, a new paradigm, to be able to kind of take things forward, right? And that is, you know, everyone got used to working from home. Everyone got used to the flexibility. So now companies are saying, well, we can save money. People are more productive. Everyone kind of gets used to their kids kind of coming into the Teams window, the video, and hearing the dogs bark. So from that perspective, you know, I think Gartner realized this and put together a concept that is, you know, having a computing environment that's people-centric and location-independent, taking advantage of you know, the digital user interface and you know, but still being secure from a remote access standpoint, utilizing the cloud and being resilient in terms of delivery. So, but the challenges there are, you know, kind of deploying applications, the myriad of complexity that we have in the number of tools that we have that may not completely, you know, they have gaps. Let's put it that way. And then when it comes to WVD, what we're realizing, and we're working with a lot of customers around the world, about 40% of your applications will actually convert to MSIX. So what do you do then? What's your plan B, right? And then how can you ensure that every application can be accessed and from multiple devices? Because you've got so many people out there trying to access from multiple different devices. How do you do it efficiently? So we kind of looked at it and figured, okay, what's the ideal solution? The ideal solution is having provisioning applications to a myriad of different, let's call them workspaces. So we can do it through Microsoft Teams, Microsoft SharePoint, third-party portal, an intranet, even the Windows start menu can be a workspace. In addition to that, if applications don't convert to MSIX, what do you convert them to? Do you convert them? But how can you still have them accessible and provision them? And then delivery. There's SCCM, there's Intune, both doing different things, both having gaps. There's no real glue to kind of work with them together. There's autopilot, but again, 3 different things that do 3 separate things. How do you manage that? How do you fill the gaps, right? So, and the desired outcome is really a Windows virtual desktop where users are accessible, accessing their image, if you will, or virtual desktop from pretty much any device anywhere. But it's not just that easy because you have maintenance, releases, patches. You've got to make sure that your applications are up to date. You have different user profiles, so you have to have different versions of each application that runs with those profiles. You have multiple cloud images. So all that needs to be simple and less complex. So where do we come in, right? So we encompass a broad range. We call ourselves an end-to-end application management platform. It includes software distribution and updates. It includes the user experience and presenting applications to a user in an environment that they can manage and customize and makes it easier. Approvals, workflow, governance, all that stuff falls in line with what we do. And it encompasses both IT and the business, the user, and the administrator. But really, when it really boils down to it, it's all about the apps. If you can't access apps, you can't run a business efficiently, right? So how do we do that? Great technology that we developed, it's called Smart Icons. To the user, it's just an icon. It's an icon just like you would see on any Windows 10 desktop or laptop, Chrome and Adobe and Excel. But and interestingly, if you take an icon in an application, that icon is meant for one application with all kinds of different stuff around it. You got to consider printers and files and file shares and all those parameters that go when you try to launch an application. But what we've done is we've taken that icon and we've taken the complexity away for the user and built in a way to manage it more efficiently from a contextual basis. Let's face it, your users are mobile now. They might be home on an open Wi-Fi. They might be in an office. They might be at the airport on a public Wi-Fi. Though each particular location or context requires a different launch sequence. And being able to have that on all those different devices is very difficult. We've simplified it. We have one icon, multiple launch sequences. If I'm in my office connected to the Ethernet behind the firewall, I just click on the icon and the native version on my machine loads. But what if I am in that airport? What if I am on that public Wi-Fi? And what if I am on my personal device, whether it's a tablet or an iPhone or an Android? I hit that icon, and what happens? Well, if I've got personal or corporate data on my personal device, it might be a problem. So I have to serve up the application in a different way to that device and in that scenario. We do that. We can create multiple launch sequences for each particular application, one icon. The user doesn't know, it doesn't even realize that this might be served up via RDS running Citrix in the background. When they had their laptop hooked into the VPN, it was actually physically running on their machine. So from that perspective, we remove the complexity from the end user, and we make it easier to manage and create those scenarios through an admin console that is really easy to use and administer. Kind of looks like this. You have all the stuff all the way to the right on the back end, VMware, Citrix, Microsoft, all kinds of different clouds and on-prem and SaaS. So what we do is we take all the applications in those environments, we aggregate them to Liquit, and we push them out to whatever particular workspace you want. And to the user, it's just a bunch of icons that I can access from any device. To the back end, it's really a faster and easier way to be able to adopt Windows Virtual Desktop, because what's the beauty of Liquit is we decouple the application from the back end. So user disruption is a thing of the past, right? So I can do what I need to do. I can even do a major migration of applications from, let's say, an on-prem system to Windows Virtual Desktop running in Azure on the cloud. It doesn't disrupt the user. The user never knows. It's just another launch sequence to the administrator. So much faster and easier adoption, much faster and easier way to not only get up and running, but also provide a way that your users aren't disrupted and have access by any particular device and any time, and single sign-on, by the way, so it's secure. We can also integrate with third-party two-factor authentication. So from that perspective, we enable a more efficient, but yet a higher available and easier and much more attractive way of delivering applications through Windows Virtual Desktop. So from that perspective, this is, we have a free trial. We'll share this this presentation after the talk, but I'm going to turn it over to my friend Rents. Rents is our senior consultant here.
Thank you, Chuck.
No worries, but because of the change up, Nico had to run. He had another engagement. So Rents just kind of, we gave him a call. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll help out. So Rents is our man. So I turn it over to Rents. And if you have any questions after, we're happy to answer those. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck, for the introduction and all the stuff you said. So I'm going to start off by presenting my slideshow. I hope it's visible for everyone. Yeah, my name is Rens Kattenberg. I'm a solution architect at Liquit, and I was here to step in for Nico. He has some other applications at the moment. So as we go as Liquit, then we see that shift is happening. And if shift is happening in IT, shit is happening in IT. And the main focus there is around the end user. It's most of the time, it's not the administrators that fuck up the system, but it's the end users that don't know where to go or which path to take. And they need to get used to the new situation. They need to be informed, trained, or have them explain how the new situation or how the new tooling is working out. And that's the problem with the shift. And that's why shift is always slow. And especially if you look at the WVD platform, what we see is that most companies want to shift their entire organization into WVD, and they try to do that using MSIX. And the problem with doing that is that MSIX is not capable of having 100% of your applications inside of MSIX, inside your WVD environment. And with that solution, then most companies take note and say, all right, this solution is not there yet. We wait for a later moment to finish this up. But with Liquit, what we can do is make that shift, but don't make it 100%. Make it for the applications that are capable of going there, and let the other applications reside where they are at the moment. If that's in your Citrix environment, in your VMware environment, on-premise or local installed on your machine, it doesn't matter where they reside at the moment. But what we can do for the end users with the Liquit desktop is make that a single pane of glass. So a user clicks on an icon, and whatever you guys as IT admins decided for that application to happen in any situation, Liquit will provide that situation to the end user without notifying him. So the end user just presses Word, and whatever situation you guys come up with for Word to reside, it will launch Word. And if the best option is WVD, it will go into WVD. But if the best option is a local installed installation of Word, all right, we'll give them that. And that's all the scenarios that we try to incorporate into those smart icons. And that's why we see that Shift is now in a better state, because you as admins have control over where your resources are resided. You have the ability to change up applications, how they function, without notifying end users that you changed anything on the system. And that gives you more flexibility inside your organization and inside your IT infrastructure. So that's what we are doing with the Liquid installations. And so what we'll see is here we have the different applications inside of our Liquid system. This is a Citrix application. And if I want to move this over to a different kind of application, I simply can by changing the parameters inside some application. And here you see the WVD part, and those two reside inside the same system named Liquid. And for the end user, those can be combined, and we can change those up. So even if the load is too high on a Citrix environment, we can scale out to WVD, we can scale out to local, we can scale out to any resource that we need to scale this out to, and also make the shift to a more modern workplace. So now it's starting up in the Citrix environment. And I can open up my drives there. And if I go back and I add an action to this, and I say I want to add an additional WVD part to this, I'm just gonna select the launch action of the WVD action set, and that will trigger this same application to, instead of launching in Citrix, it will launch in your WVD environment. And this is the same icon, and this is all based on intelligence that you guys can provide into the system. All right. You see this application has a complete DTAP staging system inside, so you can assign multiple levels of DTAP to your system. You're going to refresh the application right here. You'll see it prompted as new. And when we click this application, it will just straight away launch us into a WVD session, signals are on. And so what you can do is application-based change over to new systems. And then your WVD system does not have to be 100%. You can make phases to shift applications based on context. So what we try to do with this method is we want those methods to deploy as well. So what we want to do is we want to deploy the on-premise systems, and we want to deploy the applications there. We want to deploy the cloud situation and also the hybrid situation. So what we want to accomplish is not only Liquid is taking care of the launch sequence of this application, but is also providing the installation into this for those applications. And where we can do that with is with the on-premise installation. Our agent can fully deploy and install an application silently without a user having admin privileges. On the cloud, we can provide it with running into WVD and supplying there the full image deployment. So we can create golden images. We can create a session host with a PowerShell script extension, or even better, make a golden image that's not deployed at the moment and deploy it when you provide a session host with it. And then you have the complete flexibility of changing up application as you go on your session host. And then we also provide the hybrid scenario where you see most people are looking at right now. And that's the combination between some parts in the cloud and some parts on premise. And you want to shift over more and more applications to cloud-based workspace. So why Liquid Workspace for Microsoft? We think it's the ultimate migration platform for WVD, because you don't have to shift all your stuff at once. You can do it based on application. You can do it based on functionality, or you can do it based on your resources in your organization and shift over that way to make it not a full project to go over. So if we look at the virtual desktop, what we support is almost any Windows 10 environment. We support a full workspace management solution. We have single sign-on capabilities with almost any of those applications. We also have an identity management solution inside of our software where we can single sign on much more applications than we already provided. That also gives you the ability to provide a kiosk or thin client system that's connecting to WVD and multiple other systems that have the single sign-on capability in place there. We do image deployment, so we can combine. You can combine it with any image deployment that you currently have and shift your applications over application per application. And what we do is we do the full application management and delivery of those applications. So our unique features are the pane of glass for the end user. So an end user, we don't want to bother with. If you want to start up your Internet Explorer, you have to check your virus scanner if it's recently updated. If you have such a policy in place, you don't want to have your end user check that because they won't do it. And if you make that into a smart icon, you can make those things work. The same thing is with shifting over those resources. If you want the shift to happen and not the shift to happen, then you want the single pane of glass for your Liquid environment to just press an icon and launch whatever is necessary and that the admins put into place to happen beneath that icon. We have connectors. We have a connector to WVD, to Citrix, and to multiple others, to RDS, and so on, to easily update and maintain those applications that you don't have to put in any code yourself. So they're fully automated by that. And what we do is provide the SSO to the WVD client as well. And that way we can seamlessly migrate to WVD smart icon situation. What we also have is a Liquid setup store that's providing over 3,000 applications at the moment. It's Windows and Mac. And what we do is for those applications, we keep track of all the updates that are in the system or the vendor is giving out. And what we do is we provide you with all the silent switches and with wizards to accommodate with those. So you can automatically create MST files for your MSI installation. You can convert them over to MSIX with our tool. We can integrate them into Intune if you like. We have also a connector that pushes them into SCCM if you want. So there are multiple options to do that. And our deployment methods are also working with Autopilot and Intune. So if we take a look at the Windows Virtual Desktop, first of all, we're going to take a look at the connector that we've created. So if we go into the connector stage, what will happen is if you go into the connector section, what you can do is set up a connector with your WVD environment. That can be either the old WVD or the ARM system, the new one. Automatically, Liquid will determine which version it is. What it will do is you can save network credentials to it and also automatically apply the client, and that you can get from the setup store, where we always provide you with the latest versions. Then you will set which stage you want to publish the applications. and it will automatically keep track of all the applications that you are having from the WVD environment. So what you will see here is just the client and the applications that this connector is managing. So those applications can be automatically integrated into our Liquid system. Right. The next step is deployment. That's something we also can do with WVD. So what can we do? The problem with WVD at the moment is SCCM doesn't work on WVD at the moment. And it's hard to deploy applications now in your master image. So what we'll do is we have an agent that's communicating to the HTTPS port, and that's fully allowed inside your VM to deploy all applications necessary for that session host to be accommodated with. That can be if you deploy the machine, or afterwards, you can also update and track those applications as well. So what you will see is we have three types of deployment scenarios. We have the golden image setup, where you take an image from the marketplace for the WVD environment. That can be a multi-session host or a regular session host. What you do is you install our Liquid agent. That Liquid agent is 1.3 MB. Yes, you heard correct, 1.3 MB. And what you can do is run it into a deployment mode. With the deployment mode, it will automatically launch a sequence of applications that you can determine, and it will automatically deploy those applications silently to that machine. Then you can capture it, the machine, and create session host from it. This is the method you guys use the most, I guess. And instead of using Liquid to deploy those applications, you install them by hand. You open up an RDP session to your session host, to the machine, and you install those applications by hand. The next option that we provide you with is you're going to create a session host straight from the marketplace. You can add Liquid into a PowerShell extension. And with the PowerShell extension, you can install the Liquid agent and run the deployment as a session host is going to create. And then it will automatically install those applications as well. The third option, I think, is the best option. There you can have, similar to the first program, is create an image from the marketplace, open it up, install the Liquid agent on it, but don't run the deployment at that stage. Before you do, you capture the image. And during the sysprep stages of that image deploying into a session host, it will check Liquid which applications should be installed on that session host. And then it will deploy that session, that image during the creation of the session host. And with this scenario, you only have to create an image if you change the OS, and not for everything you want to apply, every application you need to change. Because if you change an application, you're just gonna create a new sequence, a new deployment sequence inside of Liquid. And the next time you apply a session host, it will automatically deploy that application. With the Liquid release and patch management, it's also an option to repackage into MSIX. So we have a complete option of repackaging setups into MSIX format. And I'm going to show you that now. So we have our Liquid Setup Commander tool that you can point against multiple platforms. What you can do is just go over and check any of the packages you want to create. Click that MSIX, and you can say repackage, use the repackaging wizard. You can set all the parameters. This is where we provide you with all the parameters that you can set for this application. So we know this application inside out. And we provide you in this wizard always with the business that we expect you to have as business default. So it's not the default that the setup is providing, but the default we expect you to have. And here what you can do is you can choose your packaging type. So you're going to say I want to repackage this into an MSIX format, and it will guide you through all the steps necessary to change this package over into an MSIX format. And as you saw, we can put this package into Liquid Workspace, but we can also publish this into other systems as well. And here it runs, and it will automatically create an MSIX form. This will not work for all the packages because MSIX is not fully capable of working for all packages. Not all things that are currently supported by MSIX or X install are currently working in or inside an MSIX environment. So sometimes you need to reside to other methods like appv or just regular install or use it as a remote app. And that's why with Liquid, we do not want to force you into repackaging everything to an MSIX, but we give you the ability to do it and do it fast. And now we can just provide this MSIX to the Liquid environment and create automated a package from this system, what you now can deploy and use even app attach, as you see right here. And now it also creates the app attach disk for you that will fully function for this application. And this package you can deploy into your W3D environment, but this is also working for your local environments as well. Right. So full working package there. How are we time-wise?
Yeah, how are we doing on time, Jen?
We're doing okay. You're gonna have about 10 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks. All right. If you want to create deployments for your applications, I will just hop out of this and share my screen. And we'll go into some. Right, close it up. Right, this is our demo environment of Liquid Workspace. And what you will see here is under Manage, you can set up deployments, and you can set up multiple deployments. Like here, we have the W3D deployment set up. We have assigned rights to a context, and what we have here is the application list that will deploy on that on those session hosts. If I want to add any application here, so I don't know if Java is in or Slack is in. Yeah, Java is in. If I press here Java and I press install, now my session host, the next session host I will deploy, will automatically also include Java. And this is all I have to do to modify my base image of my session host. And I have a complete repository of all setups that are in place in our setup store that I can straight away from the Liquid Workspace without having any downloads or whatsoever. I can straight up say I want to install this application. So if I go over, I will take Chrome for you guys. If I will take over, you see here it's the 46-bit and the 30-bit version. I'm gonna hit create package, and I will say here W3D demo, and I will hit next. What you will see, it will automatically present me with a customization for this installation. Here it says the business default for this application. So it will remove start icons. I can set the homepage preferences. If I say save, I say next, I can entitle this to end users, to groups, to devices, or to group of devices. And this will now automatically download this application for me. It will create a transform file, and that's if this is finished, I can launch this with the image process, and then I've updated my WVD master image. This is this version of Google Chrome I'm now currently getting. That's now currently downloading and is now finished. You see here on top that it's still managed. That means that this application will reside with our setup system. So if a new version of Chrome is emerged from the vendor, it will automatically list updates here in the update list. And I can just say, I want to apply an update for this tool. So if I say here, apply update, it will resend the configuration wizard I filled in previous. It will send that over. It will create a new version. It will create a new MST file for that new version. It will launch back, and I can determine if I say apply update in which stage I want to provide it in. So I can set up a production stage, but I also can set up a test or an acceptance stage for your WVD environment to automatically test your application inside of your session host. And the funny thing is, if you have created Google Chrome right now and you use that to distribute that out to your WVD system, the same installation you can send over to all your regular devices that do not need to go into WVD. So I can send this over to an SSCM environment to apply the same updates. I can send this over, I can trigger this automatic update with my Intune and my autopilot configuration to apply to the systems over there. So you have to package this installation once, and it can automatically adapt to all the situations that are out there based on conditions. And that's where we come in with our contexts. And that's where Liquid gets all the energy from. It's all context driven, all filter driven. So if I look into a package right here and I see like the Word installation that's right here, and I check the manage this application, you check, normally you see that this is just starting the local version of Word. But what you will see here is it's starting an array of versions of Word instead of one version. And this works because it says I stop at the first effective one. So I can reorder this in order to change the order that this application is working. Now it will start off with trying to start Word in this location. If it's not there, it will start Word in this location. And if I want to do a WVD implementation, I can set in which stage I need to have WVD in place. Or I can say, no, I want to do this only. My context is external or it's internal. And I can just filter out how the end user is facilitated with the Word environment. And it's all based on conditions. And so for the end user, it's just I press this icon, and whatever you guys made for magic, it will happen. Have you guys any questions for us?
Actually, yes. So Thomas asked, are smart applications or icons compatible with Intune, and can they be published to a company portal? Yes, they can be published to a company portal, but you can answer the first part of that question.
Alex is already
Mr. Fast Fingers. Yes,
Okay.
we provide an API for portals to integrate our smart icons. But also Intune. Are they? Yes.
Yep. And also with the commander side, we can also package applications to be in an in a .intune file. So that's working out as well. And the other way around, you also can install the agent into a deployment mode with Intune and let Liquid and all the magic that brings in here deploy applications to your Intune devices. And that benefits you greatly, because if you look here at which actions we are out of the box provide you with, it's just attaching disk from anywhere, printers, file installations, everywhere where you read, upload it, it will come from, we will make sure that the distribution of that installation will happen, or the directory or the file or whatever it's in there. Uploaded MSIX, MSDs, MSCs, the registration of Metro applications that are in there, RDP files, but even simple things like opening a URL. We have extra additional capabilities for that. And if that's not enough for you, we also have the shared authentication, where we can go from one browser to another and make that single sign-on.
We have another question in the chat.
Yes.
Right.
What are some of the scenarios where it's useful to run hybrid? If the app is local, why would I want the option to run it remote as well? Also, I get the failback if you are offline, but if it's already local, why bother with a remote version?
It's a good question there, but it really depends on the application you are resided with. If it's an application that uses a database connection, or it has any necessary connections to local resources, for instance, like files, even a Word application, they want to access your mappings, and maybe your map drives are not accessible remotely because of reasons that are security related or are technical reasons. You may want to change the behavior of a user in that situation. Does that answer the question there? Why you sometimes want a hybrid scenario?
Yeah. And just based on the user context, if you have users in all types of contexts, you want to actually, one could be offline and one could be online. It depends. Anyway.
Yep.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
So when you do the permissions, would you be able to permission instead of based on device? Can you base on the version of the app?
Yep, definitely. In the DTAP staging model here, what you will do is you can set entitlements to users, user groups, devices, device groups, or contexts. And so what I can do, if I say I want to entitle Chuck, I can set the stage where I want to entitle him to. And so I can have four versions of each application running at the same time. And what you will see there is if I make any changes to this application here in development, I will add an action set. Then you will see here's an extra action set, but that's currently not in production, because the production stage is different than the stage that's in development. And I can shift this over, say it now goes to test stage, and then we'll see it increases the version number. Now this stage is here. Here I have the stage 14 still in production, and I can now modify stage, the development stage again, and I can add some more stuff. And I can entitle those 4 DTAP stages to to a user, to a device, or to a device group, or a group of users.
Great, thank you.
I've got a question, and I'm going to apologize first because I've been distracted by some other things going on. So I may have missed it, and if I did, just tell me to rewatch the
Those
replay.
things happen. No, don't worry.
File type associations.
Mm-hmm.
How are those covered? And what if, and does it pass, like say, take Word, does it, if I double click on a Word doc, is it going to pass that doc correctly, like up to Word Online? If it, you know, if it has to fall, if it has to fail through multiple Word instances there.
What it will do is, this is just the icon that is the same icon that's in your start menu of Windows. So if Word is locally installed, the file association will be there. But of course, if you're on a system and there's no Word installed, and you open up a Word document, yeah, there's no way it will tell how to open a Word document. And we can provide registry keys. We can insert registry keys to make that handle. But if it's necessary to open up a VPN connection or such, it will not work.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yep.
I also know that we have file type association on the backlog for natively supporting it, but we don't see a lot of customers actually requesting that functionality.
Yeah, makes sense.
So if you have a
weird,
good
weird
use case,
thoughts and
we can maybe bump up the priority.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that, you know, if I've got an existing Word doc, or if I'm working on, I don't know, you know, or whatever the case may be. I mean, because sometimes you're going to get users that, oh yeah, I've got the stock here, or I'm accessing it from wherever, but maybe the first instance of Word I don't have access to, you know, how would that work with, you know, and so that's all I was thinking of.
And in your last resort, I already showed it on the screen. PowerShell is the way to go. And here's also the ability that we can change this around. Device is with full admin rights, and user is just regular rights.
Okay.
And it runs as in user context, and this is running as system. And I also can add additional credentials where I can connect to, like, for instance, like local shares. And especially if you're more Azure AD driven with Autopilot Intune, then you sometimes have a hard time connecting to local resources that are domain joined or local domain joined. And we provide options for that as well.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Right.
So Chuck had posted in the chat for the free trial. Do you mind walking us through a little bit what we can do with this free trial? How do we go get it? Just give us a quick rundown.
Yeah, no worries. So in essence, click on the link. Yeah, you sign up for the free trial. There's a video there that walks you through it. And you know, you can access the product, the platform, for 30 days, and we'll send you the, you know, login and password and all that.
And then it's a download. So what can we expect? Like going?
Well, the only download is the agent, which is, you know, as Ren said, 1.2 megabytes, somewhere around there. But it basically gives you the full, you know, experience of our agent workspace. It has a few apps in there. Martin, are you on? Is there anything I'm missing? Oh, there we go. We're clicking right through it. Down.
So the agent component is for the end user device, but for a demo trial, we provide a cloud environment and demo environment, so you don't have to install the server. But if you wish, you can actually install the server component. The only requirement is that you have some disk space for content and an MS SQL server. And that's it.
Okay, so it does use MS SQL. Great, thank you.
Yes,
So
sorry, this is Maart Jelsma.
I'm sorry?
This is Maart from Liquit. Yeah,
Oh,
this
hi,
is Maart. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we
Hi,
can.
Good evening. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we're
I
sorry.
had to leave my family
go ahead.
for a minute. Yeah, no problem. Now, if you request the 30-day trial, you'll get the credentials of your own private demo environment. It's hosted by Liquid, but with all the functionalities. And you can, of course, like Chuck mentioned, you can download the agent. But that's all you require, to be honest. And you can start immediately testing our platform.
Can you do automate the creation of images with that trial as well? Okay.
Yeah, it's fully functional.
It's a fully functional.
Fully
Chuck
functional.
Renz, not to put you on the spot, but would it be possible to get a bit more of a demo of the image creation for WVD?
Yeah, absolutely. Just our contact information is there. Actually, my email is chuck.brady@liquit.com. Just reach out, let me know when you want to schedule something, and we can have Nico or Renz or whatever, walk you through, answer your questions, and do whatever. That's available for everyone, by the way. I'll put my email in the chat.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, usually when we present something like this, it really sparks a lot of interest. And then, maybe it takes like 1 or 2 sessions for you to really kind of grasp the breadth of it. But yeah, it's being an open and flexible platform, we're able to be pretty agile. And as I said, innovation is one of our key focus areas here.
And also flexibility.
Yes.
Want to migrate from Citrix to WVD, do it per app, not all your users at once.
Oh, this was great. So I now have a new toy to play with, right?
There you go. Got all weekend.
All right. Put me to work this weekend. Great. All right. Thank you very much. If I don't see any more questions in the chat at the moment, but please continue to feel free to post your questions or come off mute. This time that we have left is for Q&A, the general discussion. So this is our moment. And before I'm gonna put the stuff